Right, good morning everybody. I'm Ross Brown and I would really like to welcome you to this morning's cyber and serial webinar, and it's entitled New Year's Cyber Resolutions. And for those in the audience who haven't already joined us as members, membership is free and easy. Just go to our website, which is www.swcrc.co.uk, and you can complete the application online. It's really that simple. You'll then benefit from our customer journey, our monthly newsletter, as well as podcasts and webinars like this. As we go through the presentation, please feel free to drop any questions in the chat, and I'll endeavour to pick them up at the end of the presentation. Or there will be a period, hopefully at the end of the presentation this morning, where you could ask questions and answers online. Can you also make sure that you're on mute during the presentations, please? So, as we start a new year, it's crucial to carry through our New Year's resolutions. And surely, there's none better than strengthening our digital defences and navigating the evolving landscape of cyber threats. Joining us today are experts in the field, and they are also two of our Cyber Essentials partners to boot. So Hannah Baverstock is from C3IA Solutions in Poole, and Karis Bouher is from PGI International, based in Bath. So Hannah is a junior security consultant. She's recently graduated with a master's in information security, and she specialises in systems resiliency and online threat intelligence. And she also has a passion for researching and preventing online scams. Karis is PGI's communications manager. Since joining PGI 5 years ago, she has become one of those people who bring up cybersecurity at a party, so she tells us. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Sometimes she's lucky enough to work closely with delivery teams on clients' projects. So both of our guest speakers will be providing invaluable insights into online scams, social engineering, and the aftermath of cyber incidents. So let's embrace our New Year's cyber resolutions and pave the way for a safer digital future. Stay tuned for a session packed with actionable insights and expert guidance. So Hannah, if I could turn to you first, you're very, very welcome, and I'm really grateful for you coming in this morning. And I know that you want to start off talking to us about online scams. So over to you, if I may.
Yeah, thank you, Ross. So in the past year, in 2023, we've seen a meteoric rise in online scams. Just in the first half of 2023, we saw £500 million stolen through online fraud, and that's only set to increase as we move into 2024. So it's great to have a knowledge of what's out there and how best to defend against it. So I think a great way to think about this is if we try to get into the minds of the people who run these scams. So who are these people? A couple of years ago, this was mainly lone wolf types trying to make a quick buck online. But recently, we've seen a massive rise in career criminal groups. So these people are often overseas. They work in call centers, as I'm sure you're well aware, and this is their 9 to 5. So they dedicate, 8 hours, 7 hours a day purely to trying to scam and attack businesses and people. So ultimately, I'd like to say that scammers are working very hard to optimize their attacks. So if you think about it, sophisticated attacks and hacking attempts can take weeks or months to set up in advance. And even with all this prep work, they may fail at the final stage when they try to execute and attack a business. And you can imagine if you're a scammer and this was your day job, that would be very frustrating. So on the other hand, if you think about it, how long does it take to write an email? Hackers can write one email, send it off to thousands of people. And even if just one person clicks that email, downloads an attachment or sends some money over, that's a win. And that took maybe 15 minutes. So that's why we're seeing so many phishing emails, is that the common scammer is trying to optimize and get as many hits as possible. They want quick and easy wins. To a lot of scammers, this can look like people with open social media accounts, businesses that don't appear to be as tech savvy. They've got a lot of older software vulnerabilities on their system. Additionally, they look at people who they perceive as vulnerable, which is, obviously such a shame, but it's people who are vulnerable financially, emotionally, and in terms of tech knowledge and security knowledge. So to these scammers, information is definitely power. I'm sure it comes to no surprise what kind of sources they like to get that information from. This is mainly social media in today's world. It's important to consider how they're getting, our email information in the first place. We're seeing a lot of scammers purchasing lists of people's emails and contact information online. These can be of, small business lists or previous scam victim lists that other scammers will sell to each other, and these do not cost a lot of money online. So that's how they're getting our information in the first place. The second one, as I mentioned, is social media. Some are a lot worse than others. Facebook in particular, 2/3 of all purchase scams originate on Facebook, and we see new scams popping up on there every day. The most recent one, I don't know if you've seen it in the news, is I miss him so much scam. This is where a friend of a friend will post something saying, oh, what a tragic accident, this person will be very missed. There's a link, it will take you to what looks like a BBC News video of some terrible car accident or other accident, but it will actually take you to a fake website to steal your credentials or market, some dodgy service or product to you. The other one we're really seeing is LinkedIn. We're seeing a massive rise in LinkedIn being used to carry out attacks. If you think about just how much information you put about yourself and your business on there, you can see why attackers really want to get in there, make a connection with you to get access to that information. In particular, we've seen some businesses put up very valuable information to scammers on there. So in their skills section, they will have things like, I'm trained to use this firewall configuration, which a hacker would obviously absolutely love to know. So just going through your own LinkedIn and maybe checking up on your colleagues just to see what is being shared and whether we want to put that out there. So if I give you a recent example of a phishing attack, it's nice and simple, but it's used LinkedIn. So the scammers have gone online, they've found the head of finance for this company. They've also found the employee list of all the other people who work there. They've pinged off an email to the head of finance saying, hey, we've not had this invoice paid through. We're going to get in trouble if this doesn't go through today. Please send it to this bank account. And luckily, the head of finance was really tuned in. She took one look at the name, goes, oh, I know that guy. And then took a look at the email address and saw it's not the company domain, and it's also not the name of the person who it's claiming to be. Picked up the phone, rang up this guy and said, did you send me this email? No. So that phishing email was caught in its tracks. But you can see how they're using LinkedIn now to target the high value people in the company that can make those decisions that may allow money to move out or the scam to take place. Another thing we're seeing on LinkedIn is recruitment scams. This is where an employee in the company will be approached by someone on LinkedIn wanting to make a connection. They may kind of seem to be operating in the same circles, have the same interests or job title. They'll offer them a fantastic job opportunity, too good to be true. Yet again, it will be, great salary. You can do it all from home, things like that. So they will say, oh, we're going to send you the full details of the job through an email. Look out for our email. Send through an email. There's a Word document with all the details. That will be opened and there's malware embedded in there. So when they read that document or download the attachment from the email, that's downloaded onto their system. And that's been very, very successful recently. And I think it's really important just to talk about those kind of scams with your colleagues, make sure people are aware of them. If you get a phishing email or a very dodgy LinkedIn message, I like to call it the point and laugh. So turn to the person next to you or spin up a Teams call and go, look at this is awful, what a bad attempt, and kind of pick out the things that tipped you off to tell you it wasn't dodgy and where you got your gut feelings from. Another one we're seeing a lot of is ransomware. I'm sure you see this all the time in the news. It can be incredibly damaging for small businesses. Scammers will use all kinds of slightly more sophisticated attempts to get that malware onto your system, which will kick off the attack. So again, that's paying attention to emails, not downloading strange software, not downloading things you've seen on the internet. I think the key thing with ransomware, where some people, aren't as prepared as they can be, is they don't have an incident response plan or an action plan to enact after this happens. To quote, is it Mike Tyson? Everyone has a plan until they're punched in the mouth. So you can have a great plan, but if it happens, it can all go terribly wrong. So we really recommend doing some kind of incident exercising. Turn off all the computers and just go, we've been hit with ransomware. What do you do? Nice, simple, easy plans. Call up whoever you're going to talk to. The great people to go to are the NCSC, Action Fraud, and they will be able to signpost you to what to do. So just have a nice, simple plan you can kick off in the case of that. Another scam that's incredibly popular and incredibly lucrative at the moment is cryptocurrency scams. Obviously, people saw absolutely massive success with this, a couple of years ago, making huge profits from investment. And scammers were able to latch onto that because they know that people are willing to put money into cryptocurrency, so they know that they can take people's money a lot more easier. We see this in tandem with romance scams, which isn't necessarily something you're vulnerable to as a business, but certainly on a personal element, people are vulnerable to this. They'll chat to someone online, get to know them over a couple of months, start dating even. So that trust is really built up. And then the person will go, hey, I have this great investment opportunity. I've made X amount of money. And they'll send them the link to this cryptocurrency. Now, unfortunately, a lot of the victims of this are very security and technology savvy. There was a case on the news I read about where a cybersecurity expert fell victim to this scam. And this was because when he researched this cryptocurrency, there was lots of very legitimate information supporting it. So they hide legitimate information, or they hide their fake information alongside legitimate information to give what they're saying more weight. So this guy, he put a lot of money into this cryptocurrency. He saw his profits almost double, and he was like, oh, brilliant. So he took his money out. He's like, this is great. I can take my money out. Let me try and put more in. So he put more and more, put his savings in, and then decided, to take out a loan to put even more money into that. And when the scammers realized that this account was, flush with cash, they pulled the rug out from underneath him. So that is something to be really aware of. Cryptocurrency, in any dealings, if you're not 100% sure of the source and you can't vet it properly, just stay away and always be super suspicious, even from people you think there's always people who can impersonate people, especially on Facebook, hack people's accounts. So just make sure you're doing your own thorough research, looking at credible sources. So I think to close, the most important things, again, is just to be suspicious. It's not a nice way to live, but, especially when getting messages from people you don't know, go, why are they trying to talk to me? Is there an ulterior motive? Keep your social medias locked down if possible, especially on LinkedIn. If you get connection requests from people you don't know and they don't appear to be from a company that you're not aware of, be very careful and maybe think about just denying that. Again, just follow general cyber hygiene practices, keeping good care of your passwords, making sure you're not reusing the same passwords for everything, and make sure you've got your anti-phishing in place on your email, and make sure you talk about attempted attacks that you see with your colleagues.
Thanks, Hannah. One quick question before we pass over to Karis, if I may. And it's a question from Gabriella, and she's talking about LinkedIn and her concerns in relation to it. She's saying LinkedIn asks to use a passport, and that doesn't make her feel comfortable. But is she being paranoid about that?
Is this the verification of accounts?
Yes, I believe it is.
Yeah. So there's always a slight risk when you're putting, very sensitive documents up on websites like this. I think what LinkedIn is doing is trying to verify that you are a real person and your profile belongs to this real person. I personally have done it, and I think there's always a slight risk, but this is a big corporation who do put a lot of money into securing their services, and I think they use a third-party service that solely focuses on document verification. So there is a risk, but I wouldn't be incredibly worried about that. But again, it's all about what you're comfortable with.
And like you said in your presentation, it's all whether it's unsolicited. Clearly, you know you're trying to get into LinkedIn. And you're going through that. Another quick one, Tim. Thank you very much for your offer to share the Swansea
Oh, hang on. Yeah.
Coprinet. If you let me have the
Yes.
details
Yeah.
separately, I'll circulate it when I circulate
Yeah.
for the webinar. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Karis, obviously I've introduced you already. You're really welcome. So I know you want to talk about some of the social engineering aspects of online scams. So I'll hand over to you if I may, please.
Brilliant. Thanks, Ross. Just let me start up. I've got slides, so let me share my screen and hopefully it all works in the way I'd like it to. Lovely. Okay, hopefully everybody can see that. Great. So I'm trying to get my own face out of my face now, which is good. Right. Never enjoy seeing it. So thank you very much, Ross. And thanks so much, Hannah. That was really interesting. And when Ross told me that Hannah was talking about scams, I wanted to talk about sort of the social engineering aspect, the non-technical aspects of cybersecurity. So just to give you an idea of who we are, Protection Group International, we have a mission of empowering organizations to counter digital threat. And that means we're either helping organizations build digital resilience by doing projects for them or helping them develop their own capabilities to do that. So my first question is cybersecurity purely technical? I wanted to talk about the answer to that question, because all of us at PGI think that it's a very, very binary, it's a very, very narrow way of understanding cybersecurity, because it's not just about protecting against technical attacks. And I think we often forget that when we talk about data breaches, we aren't always thinking about the other ways it could be caused aside from a technical attack. So last year, one part of the NHS was fined by the ICO because there was a team of staff at a doctor's surgery who were using a WhatsApp group to share client information. I don't think anyone thought there was any ill intention, but it was obviously to make their jobs easier, but unfortunately it doesn't align with the DPA, and it actually didn't align with NHS's own rules either. I was reading earlier in the week that there's an NCA deputy director who was fired recently because they were sharing confidential information on WhatsApp and via personal email. Again, I don't think there's any ill intention here. It's making our jobs easier, but it doesn't work with data protection. So at the end of the day, you've got these threats that aren't necessarily malicious, but they still result in a breach, and they're not caused by a technical issue. So I think it's really important that while we talk about strong passwords, while we're talking about using MFA, while we're talking about staying on top of the threat landscape, and those things are really important, we also, as Hannah was saying, we need to make sure people are on top of what's happening with scams, with social engineering, with phishing, and it's about doing it regularly. So as a communications professional, I can always recommend bite-sized pieces of information are best because they're likely to stick. So once you've done that big training session, it might be an annual thing, it might be a quarterly thing, back that up with some bite-sized information that people can just keep to mind when they're looking at emails, when they're looking at things online. So the next thing I wanted to ask is whether or not anyone thought that the end goal was always money for a threat actor. And I'm sure most of you know that. And no, that's not always the goal. So if you look at NotPetya, that's one we all know. It brought some very, very big organizations to a standstill. I know it's a bit old, but it's still such a good example. The original intent there wasn't about extortion. It wasn't about encrypting data and ransoming it. It wasn't about stealing it and selling it on the dark web. It was actually about paralyzing organizations. And the results of that ended up being way wider than I think even the original threat actors thought it would be. And then last year, you might remember a few pieces coming out in the press about a long-running social engineering campaign by a certain state where they were basically gathering information from UK government employees. And there was a lot of evidence that said they were going to use that information that they'd gathered for disinformation campaigns. So for a lot of us at PGI, when we see cyber advisories come out of the NCSC, they're really good at from a communications perspective, the way they communicate that, it reaches all levels of people who know what's going on. But what it misses out on is we're not seeing anything about how to disrupt and how to identify misinformation and disinformation campaigns. So there is a method to my madness here, and it's kind of like a little story. What's real and what's not? I spoke to the team, so we do quite a bit around disinformation. Some of our clients, we help them map out these networks that are producing it, and it's the same kinds of people who are doing scams and phishing. So I spoke to them about something really tangible that you wouldn't think I'm just giving you like a hand wavy kind of example. So 2024, big election year. We're expecting to see a very, very, very big uptick in major disinformation campaigns. Interestingly, the best and the most sophisticated ones are actually pretty close to what we'd see a political party put out. So you may or may not know that you're actually being influenced, and they're very polished, and they have long lead times. And they spend time building up and shaping perception on lots of the key issues that we talk about and that we really care about. And those issues are what we call wedge issues. So it's essentially a subject that has really strong opposing views. And given that I'm talking to the Southwest, I thought I'd use the example of what it's not. It's not the jam versus cream debate. It is definitely jam first, by the way, but it's things like immigration, climate change. These are the things that provoke really strong interaction or reactions from people and result in really angry, upset interactions between people. So threat actors use those social engineering techniques to gather the information, to learn what those wedge issues are, and then how they can use that to build their campaigns. And they do it this way because they know they're going to get a response. They know that it's going to get people emotional, and they know that people are going to react really strongly. So this is my last slide, and I wanted to talk about the parallels that I see between disinformation campaigns and obviously scams and phishing. And if we were talking about a phishing education session, I would give you some tangible things to walk away with. So they have a lot in common. The place to start though is where knowing what wedge issues are. So it might be in your community, it might be in your industry, it might even be in your organization, and it might even be in your neighborhood. So if you know what those wedge issues are, you're more likely to pick up when something isn't quite right and when you're potentially being targeted on a certain subject. It might be something political, like a stance on net zero. So if you're reading something and you think that's not quite right, it's probably because it's not quite right. So some tangible things to look out for. Threat actors, like in phishing, will use things that already exist. So in this case, a disinformation campaign might use an existing email or domain name like Reuters, and they'll riff off that and they'll turn it into Reuters.info, and they'll then also create legitimate sounding outlets like the Washington Bulletin, for example. It sounds legit, and for most people, if it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it must be a duck. But that's not always the case. Another common tactic that we see is threat actors building up their audiences. So they'll target interests, they'll target hobbies, they'll target lifestyles. And social media and online forums are really, really good for this. So say, for example, you're in a Facebook group about beaches in Cornwall. They'll start off with, here's some hidden gems, here's a great walk you can do. And then over time, there'll be these subtle changes to content. It will get more political. You might see more content coming up around the cost of living or immigration. It's anything that they think will provoke people. And that will be the starting point, and that's what we call a bait and switch, which again, we also see in scams. So some key points for you. Don't trust a page because it's got politics in the title, or if the page looks incredibly polished or the website just looks really legit. If you've not heard of it before, there might very well be a reason for that. And I know that this is probably quite difficult for your average Joe blogs. I know we've got an audience here of people who understand a technical environment, who understand how the online world works. And no one really knows that, oh, we can just jump onto Whois and see who the domain is registered to and when it was registered. But I think if people are aware that there's a possibility that something isn't legitimate, it means they stand a bigger chance of noticing, something doesn't seem quite right here. I'm not going to continue reading that. I'll just go and stick to the BBC article I was reading earlier. Oh, and while I'm at it, I should probably double check that the domain is correct. You can also check third-party commentary and reviews. One of the websites I personally use, I can't say that PGI uses it because that I don't know, but I use mediabiasfactcheck.com, and that just gives me a good idea of what a website, particularly in the media, is like. You can also check double check sources and names. And then as a final thing to leave you with is, if your gardening club on Facebook suddenly starts becoming super political, or the Visit Ireland website that you've been going to stops showing beautiful pictures of the Donegal coast and starts giving you arguments for Irish reunification, you may be a victim of a bait and switch.
Karis, that was great. Thank you so much. I'm sure we will learn a huge amount. But it's ironic, isn't it? It's everything that we address in terms of cybersecurity. It's always actually stopping, thinking, actually, is what I'm looking at, is it purporting to be something that I don't understand? And like you say, always go back to a known source and a known website that you've mentioned, just to check that I'm not being scammed here. And actually, that kind of leads me into another question from Gabriella, and I guess it's for Karis. Karis, is it possible to put those sites on the chat, please? Because I think there are a number of viewers.
Yeah, I think so. I can send.
If not, what I'll do is, if you let me have them, and I'll send them round with the link to the video when I send that round once we've loaded it onto YouTube.
That might be the easiest way to go about it.
Yeah, okay, let's do that. I appreciate we're sort of running fairly short on time. Another question from Gabriella, and I don't know, Hannah and Karis, if you're able to answer this one. Gabriella asks, if we see an account that seems scammy, is there a way to report it on LinkedIn? And I'm not sure that I'm expert enough on LinkedIn to answer that. I don't know if either of you two feel that you can.
Or any other social media. It doesn't have to be LinkedIn, but I think we know when it's a weird one, but I don't know what you can do about it.
Yeah, I can have a go at answering that one. I think usually the usual way that you can block people, I have to confirm if this works for LinkedIn as well, is if you go to their profile, the 3 dots, usually towards the right, click on that, report. I think there's definitely a way to report people impersonating other people on LinkedIn. I've come across that one before. That would be how I would try and do it, but obviously I have to go and check.
Thanks, Hannah. As I said, I am conscious that we're really pushing time. I just want to let everybody know, in relation, I suppose, again, it links into what Gabriella's just asked, why you should report phishing scams. The National Cybersecurity Centre is a UK government organisation that's got the power to investigate and take down scam email addresses and websites. Reporting a scam is free. It only takes a minute. By reporting phishing attempts, you can reduce the amount of scam communications you receive. You can make yourself a harder target for scammers, and you can protect others from online cybercrime. And don't forget, and I don't want to make you not be able to sleep this evening, but as of December 2023, the number of reports received stands at more than 27 million reported scams, which in itself has resulted in 161,000 scams being removed across 295,000 URLs. So certainly the NCSC are doing their bit to try and keep us online. That's all I'm afraid we have time for today. Thanks very much for tuning in. As always, we'll put this up on our YouTube channel and we'll endeavour to get you all the links that we've discussed this morning and the link to the video should you have any colleagues who want to see it. Just remains to say, stay safe online. Thanks very much indeed.
Cheers. Thank you, Ross.
Thanks, Ross. Thanks, everyone.